Okay, can you please take your seats? We would like to continue. Okay, I know it's difficult after lunch and you would rather prefer to sleep and digest than to follow a presentation. The next one is on EASA's involvement in the development of industry standards. And on the agenda you will find Massimo Mazzoletti as presenter. Unfortunately, Massimo got sick and Alain was kindly offering and accepting to do the presentation on Massimo's behalf. So Alain, please.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I have the privilege and the honor, I would say, to try to keep you awake after the lunch, and it will be, I hope, achieved soon. And for the shiny presentation, I want to mention something. You have to wait for the next one on innovation, new technology, and so forth. So I try to keep the two as entertaining as possible. And also for this one on the standard industry, how do we, as I involve ourselves into this? It is interesting to see that as this morning we spoke about competence, we spoke about knowledge, we spoke about SICOM, a common point to all of that is most of the time we do not know what partners, stakeholders are doing. And here, what I would like to do today on behalf of my colleagues is to introduce to you what do we in EASA do to better support standards development in general, and of course industry standard in the design world specifically. You will see that we have an interesting organization. Some of you may be familiar with it, some may not be familiar. I would like also to invite to join me Chris Misiak, who is one of the key players into this group. He is the one who designed the tool I will present to you very soon on how to manage our priorities into this management body. So, in a nutshell, what I will introduce to you is this international standard committee within EASA. Well, the title is a bit strange, international. You will understand why in a few minutes. It's because we are tackling both aspects, internal coordination and international participation. So, we go forward. So, this presentation very quickly. What are the objectives and the scope of this committee? How do we organize ourselves? That's why you will see that we have put in place a quite solid organization. It can always be improved, of course, and streamlined. But given the constraints, given the environment, I think we've achieved today a certain level of maturity, which, of course, based on your feedback, can always be improved. What were, very quickly, the outcome in 2018 and 2019? And then, of course, the most interesting part of the presentation, we have some issues, we have some topics on which we could work better jointly. Again, this presentation is not EASA, how do we work internally, is EASA, how do we organize ourselves in order to better work with you. And in order to better work with you, we need to make sure that you also on your side, industry side, if I may say, you organize yourselves as well as you can. And you will see the last slide, a couple of recommendations. Nothing, no rocket science, common sense, but sometimes you will know very well common sense is the most difficult aspect to implement. So, the scope of this committee. Basically, we have four parts, starting with the one we are not tackling into this committee, JARUS. It's quite simple to explain why aren't we tackling JARUS into this committee, dealing with standards and international cooperation. It is because we work mainly with EuroCAE and other European committees and organizations, and therefore, for this specific committee, it has been a wise decision not to include it in here, because in terms of management, it would be a bit complicated. Then we are coming to the real living parts. ICAO groups and panels, standardization body, and that's what I would like to focus on today, and cooperation with the US, ARAC, EASA, very familiar to you, how to make sure that we remain harmonized. Alors, it is very important to have this kind of structured approach into our system, because we have some specific agency vision and strategic objectives, which you may be familiar with. They are published. And of course, we have finite resources, as much as you have. And we have to make sure that what we decide to work on will be really something we have to work on based on our strategic objectives. In particular, the various recurrent topics today are, of course, we spoke about them already yesterday and this morning, CS23, ASTM 44F committee and so forth, VTOL, we cannot speak about standards without talking about VTOL, of course, eVTOL. A lot of work is coming to us and we have to organize ourselves. On the harmonization with the US side, it's also an important aspect, this ARC-ARC. I will mention a group very close to my heart. Sorry, I'm still a pilot, so I try to favor a bit the flying aspects. The Flight Test Harmonization Working Group. This was created years ago into this harmonization forum and has led to significant ARC and ARC work on really topics which are of prime importance to you, industry, and to us, safety regulator. Typical examples, stall prevention, upset recovery, flight control, flight load, fly-by-wire, and so forth. We cannot afford not being present in this kind of business. So that's why, from a management perspective, we have to make sure that we have somewhere in the agency a group managing and streamlining and pushing for those various tasks. Whoops, I was too fast, sorry. But nothing new here, so that's basically what I explained. An important point, we are mainly here design, manufacturing industry. Standards are heavily, really heavily used into the ATM world. And we learned a lot from them. When this committee was created, that's now about 5-6 years ago, the real initiation of this business was into those standards, into this way of standardizing activity with industry and stakeholders. So nothing really new here. We try to have key topics, so international cooperation, ICAO, FAA, and other really key partners, standardization bodies, and when we are doing this, normally we are able to support you as best as we can. Very quickly, into this IISc, so you see how it is organized. From day one until last month, Pascal Medal was the chair of this group, the chief engineer, so in charge of all aspects cross-directorate into the agency. Pascal has got some more tasks and he has handed over the chairmanship of the group to Massimo, who unfortunately has got the flu, as we said earlier on. I'm here on his behalf. So Massimo is the new chair of this group and is taking care of safety strategic objectives, so it makes sense. And below you have a number of staff, of directorates, participants. All agency directorates are participating at management level into this decision body. So this IISc, this standardization committee, is really the key group in the agency, cross-directorate, no silo effect, nothing. It is really cross-directorate, having the privilege to work on all standardization, international and ICAO tasks to be performed for our common benefit. Now, moving on to the specific standardization body activities, which are what we are interested in today. So the right-hand side of the table here. You see that we cannot be everywhere first. The list here is not exhaustive. As we said, there are many more bodies, but we had to focus our involvement into those bodies where we have or we anticipate major benefit and major efficiency gain for our common activities. So EuroCAE, RTCA, SAE, ISD STAN, a number of representatives are in the room so that they can complement as necessary ETSI, IATA, and ASTM 44, of course. Chris, if you have comments, do not hesitate to interfere. You are welcome. Yep. I knew you would have a suggestion on the next one. Good. So how do we work in the agency? And how do we set priorities? I will start first with a recurrent comment I hear from some of you in the room that why aren't you present here? Why shouldn't you do this? Why don't you go there and so forth? because we have to abide by some objectives, some priorities, and we have to establish in the most neutral and objective manner possible those priorities. So any proposal, any working group activity is coming to the IISc, and the IISc, according to a number of criteria, will assess the priorities. And the way to assess priorities is now following a quite structured process. It's quite stable and strong in terms of prioritization tool establishment, and Chris was the one who initially developed this tool. We have found 7 criteria. They are listed here. Is it strategic, sensitive? Does it relate to a safety issue? Do we have an harmonization issue? I spoke about my flight test harmonization working group, for instance. It is a typical high-level harmonization issue. New and novel technologies, work at EASA request, because we have some specific direct needs from the agency, and so forth. Chris, maybe a few words on the priorities. How does it work?
So first, I just want to thank Alain for the opportunity to speak to you today, and he was very kind in his introduction. It's not just me. Behind this is a group of people who are working to make sure that the agency's objectives are being fulfilled through our activities on the standards bodies and in the ICAO activities. And what we are trying to do is make sure that the agency's resources are being targeted and funneled to the most important standards where we have interest according to these criteria. So we have, in the previous slide, you saw the organization, and I'll speak towards standards, it's what I know best. We have a similar structure on ICAO. On the standard side, we have the involvement of our chief experts who are responsible for specific domains, and they are making sure that the strategic criteria are being fulfilled for our involvement on different activities. So it's not just an individual from EASA participating here. What we want to make sure it's the agency's objectives being representative in the standards and the development of the technical standards that all of you are familiar with. And I just want to point out again that we've got a team of people working on this, and we are coordinating our efforts so that at the agency level, we're not working at cross purposes.
Many thanks, Chris. So this we can scroll up. Oh, that's interesting. Whoops. What do we do in practice? We are on the executive council or technical committee of the 7 key standardization body. What is in red here on this slide are the groups, the standardization body in which we are at council level. So we are the highest possible level. That means in the EuroCAE, SAE, ISD STAN, we really have common strategic decisions in between the standardization body and the agency. And in terms of common prioritization of activities, this is essential. There are so many things going on around us. There are so many initiatives that we need together, you, industry, and us, we need really to challenge first what's coming to us and to set common priorities. And when you are at this council level, since we have a voting right, you can heavily influence the way to go one direction or the other. At the end of the day, it is to favor the consensus. The key word here is to achieve consensus in order to be more efficient in the real world when we will make use of those standards for certification purpose. So you see here, Pascal is at the EuroCAE Council. In the EuroCAE TAC, you have Friedhelm and Mr. Brian Joly and a few others, chief expert colleagues in the SAE and the ISD STAN. So voting rights are really important to us. If we have no voting right, well, we are observers, and then if I use the word from your side, the return on investment may be limited. Because as observer, if we something we are not happy with, we can comment, we can say be careful, we can mention some reservations. At the end of the day, we have no say. Bon, so that's not the most efficient way to work. When we are officially in an activity, when we are really contributing, that's a different story. And I see some colleagues here from ISD STAN. You may agree or disagree. I would say partly agree, probably. But when we have real empowered agency contribution to a working group, this is beneficial to you and to us, because in the end we can take over your standard when they are found acceptable to us. Sometimes we may agree to disagree, and we have recent cases where, sorry, what you developed was not good enough to us in terms of safety regulator constraints. So no, this we cannot take full credit. But there are many cases where we can take full credit. So this is work under construction. And of course, there are many other working groups here. What you see, sorry for the acronyms, these are EU coordination group for ATM, for unmanned aircraft, for cybersecurity. A lot of groups are developing around us. I would not say proliferation because it has a negative connotation, but in a way, there are a lot of groups generated and sometimes competing. You will see later. And we have to make sure that jointly we can work on it. Now, a specific word on the last bullet, the FAS. What is this FAS UAS? It is the Forum for Aeronautical Software. And in this forum, they met last week in the agency, so I'm quite familiar with what they've done. They're working on critical software development for the future, talking about COTS, talking about D178C, ED892, and so forth, and how to pave the way for new technology implementation. So the FAST UAS was generated for UAS because UAS world, they are permanently challenging our well-established historical structure. They need to have more agile models. So the FAS was really developed into this mindset. And believe it or not, what we saw is that now, after the first brainstorming, sometimes lively brainstorming into this forum, new ideas are developing. And talking, for instance, about COTS, they are working not only for UAS benefit, in fact, but they are working for the whole aviation industry benefit. So that's why I wanted to mention this one in particular. There is a real common interest here to invest time and effort into this kind of group, as long as we know that they are meeting our strategic visions and objectives. Well, a few, I will not go through them all one by one. We are just the last afternoon, right after lunch, so I don't want to bother you with this. You will see when you will get the hands out, quite impressive list of achievements or key contributions here. Again, what is important, you will find all over the presentations, all over the discussions, UAS, general aviation, Part 21 light, and so forth. It is coming back regularly. So this is tackled under all possibilities, under all entry points, be it at Part 21, Michael yesterday talked a lot about it, or standardization bodies contribution. And we are quite happy with what you saw, with what we saw here, in particular, how to coordinate with ASTM. CS23, you saw yesterday, Amendment 5, is basically implementing these ASTM standards for GA. So we have to make sure that in terms of advisory material, we are still able to manage commonly the development within ASTM. So under the IISc, we also manage, monitor, I would not say control because it's a bit an oversight, but we are monitoring what is going on to make sure that our safety regulatory objectives and constraints are still met. It is nice to declare, I implement a standard. Now, on the long term, it is like initial certification on continued worthiness, coming back to this morning. We have to make sure that the initial assumptions are still met afterwards. So we agree with the standard at a given time. How does the standard develop? We have to make sure that it develops according to our common safety objectives. As a safety regulator, it is still our prime objective. Alors, no surprise, that was before the achievement or the key contributions. Now the priorities we had for this year, exactly what I said, and it will still be for 2020 with a few adds-on, but clearly within EuroCAE, a main effort is going on into the GA domain, into the VTOL. We are also experimenting a pilot case for the lean processes with EuroCAE, how to streamline development of standards, how to be a bit faster in terms of time to delivery, and the VTOL AMC is used as the pilot case to test this lean standardization development. So that's work under construction. It is clearly a priority for the agency. EuroCAE, the light aspect is becoming more and more important. we spoke about Part 21 Light, but more globally, we have to talk about proportionality. You will see in my next presentation on innovation, new technology, there are clearly newcomers. They have to have something different from what we are used to do. If not, and that would be a pity, we will kill them. The business model, the business case would not survive. So proportionality becomes really one of the drivers for all of our tasks. The main criticism we heard before, EASA, you have been working for Airbus or Boeing, and you had a kind of top-down, and the SMEs were really under heavy load. I hope, feedback will tell us, of course, but I hope we are improving dramatically this. We had various initiatives, the GA task force and so forth, this proportionality, this 21 light, M light and so. So we really tried to develop new approaches to our work, still with the safety regulator objective in mind, therefore with the safety objectives, but with different processes in order to be more streamlined, not to say efficient, but to be lighter. That means commensurate to the industry needs. So that's the first one. ATM, well, we are here mostly, I would say, manufacturing. I do not think there are many ATM or INSP participants into the room here, but be aware, be informed, we are heavily involved into the ATM discussion for all kinds of good reasons. We are having also, as you know very well, a lot of discussions, a lot of activities on new space, on how to create a new environment. So ATM is also in terms of interoperability and future development, data link, ED92C and so forth is really a top priority for the agency in order to better support not really your segment of industry, but the one allowing you to operate into a safer space. Alors, that's what is, I have to do a bit of advertisement for my colleagues. As Chris mentioned, there is what we call the IISc. It is the management body, management group into the agency with a number of participants. But in terms of practical involvement, in terms of expert involvement into activities, in 2018, we were directly contributing to 150 working groups in standardization body. I'm not sure everyone in the room is aware of this effort. This means that we are trying to monitor, to handle, and to manage, thanks to our prioritization tool and so forth, a lot of activities. And this means that with our finite resources and budget, we were able to allocate last year for those working groups about 7,770, so almost 8,000 working hours, only for standardization bodies. Well, it may not look very much for you, but for us, in terms of direct involvement into this long-term investment, it's not negligible, to say the least. And this year, 2019, we are about 15,000 working hours, which means close to being between 9 and 3 full-time equivalent. So you could say that on a daily basis in the agency, we have close to 10 staff members permanently working on standardization bodies activities. It's for the management, for ourselves in the agency. When we ran the analysis, we knew it was quite a lot, but when we got the 2017, 18, 19 result, we really saw a growing tendency, and we are quite pleased by the developments. And as you know very well, we are moving into performance-based environment, risk-based, performance-based. We want to make more use of standardization of standards, sorry. So clearly, if we want to make more use of standards, we have to be more present. And that's what you see here in terms of direct contribution. We have 15,000 working hours, and in the agency, we have 165 focal points for a given standardization activity task. So it's quite a lot, and this needs to be properly managed, because at the end of the day, what we want to make sure is that when we send someone for an activity, we, that means you and us, get something out of it. You expect that we will accept your standards. Normally, that's the expected deliverable, and we expect that this standard will meet our objectives and will be useful to the two stakeholders. So we have a common interest here to make sure that those 15,000 hours, those 165 focal points are properly managed into the positive way in order to ensure that we are efficient together. And now comes the interesting part. To achieve, coming back to what I said before here, to make sure we can make good use of those 15,000 hours, we need a bit of your help. You will understand why. What we see today, and you can feel it already from what I said before, we see a really fragmented European standardization body landscape. There are a lot of overlaps, and sometimes, I would say I'm diplomatically correct here, it results in some loss of efficiency. And that's a finding. It is not negative, it's normal life. There are so many things going on, so many activities to be managed. There is this kind of proliferation, as we said before, of activities. And this fragmented landscape, if we, and again, we together, industry and us, do not manage it properly, and at the end of the day, you and us won't be happy with the result. So, since it is fragmented, it is becoming for us more and more difficult to involve ourselves into the right activities. It is quite a challenge. We start to work on the 2020 program for next year. I have to be honest, I have still not fully understood the complete picture. I'm part of the IISc as well. It is not because we don't have any time, it is because we have a lot of redundancies, a lot of overlap sometimes, and that's what is really dangerous for you and for us. For us, because we run the risk to agree on something which we disagree next door. We may again place it there and disagree there, so it's not efficient. And for you, because you will be, at the end of the day, heavily frustrated if we are not able to take credit of a given standard at a given time when we were heavily involved into its development. So, in a nutshell, the last bullet is unfortunately very relevant to nowadays. It may prevent recognition and visibility at international level. Our European landscape is probably not the most or the strongest one we could dream about. We could jointly probably do a bit better. So that's the conclusion that Pascal Medal, as the last 6 years IISc chairman, raised and insists upon, and that I fully make mine as well. You have, European industry all together, because standards are your ownership, not ours, and we are supporting you. You have to check the system, because we speak at the end of the day about industry standards. So, and even better, European industry standards. So, my main recommendation to you, on behalf of all my colleagues, is you saw what we have today. In the agency, we have a lot of willing people, good experts, ready to work with you. But we will work efficiently with you only if we manage the vision, the objectives, and the deliverables jointly. That's the main recommendation, the main dream from us in the agency. If we want to use more industry standard in the future, and we want, and it is Patrick's key vision, and we have started to implement it in many domains, if we want to make more use of industry standards, we have to make sure that we foster common effort and common directions without having too many alternative ways. So, in a nutshell, that's what I had to introduce to you on behalf of my IISc colleagues. Chris, any additional comments you would like to make? Are you fully happy with the start of the prioritization exercise for next year? We are not obliged to answer the question. But I stop joking here. Really, these last couple of slides, are for us the main points on which we have to work together. And we are prepared to support industry to be a bit less fragmented, but it is not our decision. Industry standards are industry standards. And that's why you first have to check the system as industry key stakeholders to make sure that, as we said here with Pascal and Massimo, help yourself to help us. And in fact, we are missing half of the sentence. It's not only help yourself to help us, but then it will be for us to help you even better. And with this, I would like to say thank you all. And if you have any questions, let's try to address them. Thank you.
Well, we got a few questions, Alain. I don't know whether you can answer to them directly, or maybe Chris can support, I don't know.
Oh, boy, there are quite a few here. The first one would be for you, Marcus, in fact. Huh? You were expecting the reply, I'm pretty sure. Alors, in the meantime, I'll read the other one. So, is there a EASA roadmap for recognition of AMC good practices of ASD DOA think tank released pre-end series? I think Chiro may help here as well. If we are not, we'll take note and we'll come back to you. This is work under construction. I know that there are a lot of discussions. Maybe Patrick, you can help us to answer this one because I'm sure it's coming from your neighbor here. So
well, we have a system in place where we comment and support on these documents. I'm not quite sure what you mean with a roadmap for recognition. You mean a formal process that these things are automatically, or not automatically, but acknowledged by EASA for certain things? Okay, that's something to be discussed, how we could set that up.
There is another one below. Why create EuroCAE versions of RTCA document? Well, in fact, I would revert the question to you because EuroCAE is the European standardization body. So indeed, sometimes we have to maybe rely on others. But as European standardization body, I would say I am the least best person to answer the question. It should come from the one having decided to do so. That means the European standardization body. Alors, how do we call it?
Maybe one comment on that. If you look at DO 160 versus ED 14, they are very old documents. And at that time, a lot of these documents, whether it was this one or others, they were not working together like we used to do now. And I think that explains why some of these documents exist, even though they are identical.
Now, in the same spirit, what we see today, we want to make more and more use of EuroCAE to support us or to support you in developing new standards. We spoke about VTOL before, advisory material to our special conditions and so forth. We are tasking, if I may say, nowadays, not back to the future in the past, as Marcus mentioned for the others, we are really trying to task more and more those standardization bodies. But the issue is that we are only one player among many. So we have to make sure that within the Council, this reaches a majority and is agreed to be a priority. Alors, which? Oui, yeah, go ahead.
Just one more comment on the RTCA and EuroCAE connection. You're probably aware that to the extent possible, when a new standard is going to be developed, they try to have them done in parallel paths. So the documents, the standard will finally be released by both organizations at the same time, and the committees doing the work are coordinating the development of that performance standard. That's the objective, the goal. So there's no cross-purpose, there's concurrent development, and the standards should be equivalent. In the past, maybe it didn't happen, but that's really the goal that we're trying to enforce. As Alain said, when we are having one of our EASA staff sitting on the EuroCAE Council, that's one of our goals, and we also try to enforce that through our participation on the Technical Advisory Committee at EuroCAE as well.
Thanks, and that's a very good point because the FAS, so the Forum for Aeronautical Software I mentioned before, is a common EuroCAE RTCA working group. So that's typically what Chris was describing, even more, because it is this time integrated. And they will work not only on codes and other issues, but they will work on the DO 178C and so forth, so really on topic of common interest. So today, since a few years, really this is an important remark, thanks a lot, Chris, we try to foster common effort, and it has worked pretty well. Now we need to do the same within Europe, among the various bodies. These two historical, let's say, big players, RTCA, EuroCAE, SAE also, we have very well, I would say, established connections. So it is relatively easy to anticipate and to know what's going on. So now within our internal landscape, I will not start with all of the bodies which are in place, but then we have to make sure that we can do the same in terms of channeling common efforts. That's our most challenging task for the next years, let's say. And new business model, anyway, will fix it because you will have to take actions.
Okay, maybe one of the two questions, I don't know whether you can answer on the AS 9116, whether you know that detail. I guess we have to come back offline. Okay.
We take note and we'll come back on it, yeah.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Alain. Thanks, Chris.
So many thanks, Chris.
And Alain has the pleasure and the fun to talk now about innovation and related activities.
Since I'm still an aerobatic, very active pilot, the previous one was the freestyle unknown presentation, if I may say, using the terminology we are using. This one is the known program now. The shiny, the entertaining one, and what I wanted to mention, we are frequently joking with Marcus, this is the shiny bit, but that's not a joke, in fact. That's the way to prepare the future. Innovation and related activities within the agency. It is not only certification. Here you will see, I will start from the top and then go to the various directorates. So how do we prepare ourselves for the new challenges? Early last year, Patrick Key decided really to show and to act on how to prepare the future within the agencies. And we have entered, since, let's say, almost 2 years now, a series of changes to be prepared for the future. That's what we have here on the bottom right. It is not a joke. We need to transform the agency in terms of mindset, how to work with industry, how to be prepared for new challenges, new business models, new technologies. This is no joke. Yesterday we spoke about digital transformation, we spoke about additive manufacturing this morning, and so forth. The list is endless, clearly. So we have to put in place into our historical organization, and there is nothing wrong because we have years, decades of very good records together with you. We have to put in place a parallel stream to prepare the future. Now that's what Patrick Key started to develop last year in creating what we call this innovation cell. So what is this animal? This is a cross-directorate activity. It's a cross-directorate group with representatives from flight standard, from safety strategy, from certification. Really a small group at management level able to sit down, brainstorm on what are the newcomers, what are the new priorities, what are the challenges we have to work with, how to prepare new competencies, and so forth. So the key vision here is adapt the agency to innovation. It is to create a dynamic of innovation within the agency. But also most important, we spoke, Stefan, you spoke about it this morning, competence, how to make sure competence is shared within an organization. It is our challenge. So here, how to share innovation knowledge. We have a lot of experts who are working on very fascinating topics. We have to gather this knowledge, those sum of competencies for the benefit of all. So that's really what we have here. Collecting, sharing knowledge and information across domains is vital to our efficient development. And most important, because we are not working in isolation, this innovation cell is to make sure that we support you best. That means support the industry on innovation through new means, new tools. Your vision from the agency some years ago was a safety regulator. You are here to produce something, to design something, to develop. We are here to assess and verify that it was right, to summarize. We are not here to work with you as partners on common challenges. What we are targeting now, still having this safety regulator, of course, core business as main business, what we are targeting is to work with you also on preparing the future. In fact, the we need to be prepared for the future is not we, agency. It is we together, you and us. And that's the last bullet here on this slide, to support industry on innovation through various partnerships. And I will show you which kind of partnership we are having. But before, just to show you how did we organize the agency. Jean-Marc Cluzot, who is the lead of the innovation cell, has developed an innovation network. It is, of course, a community tool on our website. And since we are talking about new technology, we have to use up-to-date communication tools. On this network, has had a slow start, and since a few months, really now you see a lot of experts exchanging, sharing ideas, views, brainstorming without, I would say, any taboo on not additive manufacturing, because we hear about it every day, but about other topics, AI, about neural network and so forth, in a very open manner. And it is amazing for a safety regulator to see what kind of information we get into this network. So we are really keen, together with Jean-Marc and colleagues, we are really keen having this network because it's a way to get our experts into a new or different communication mode. You don't talk about innovation through emails. It does not go very far. You have really to exchange. It's a forum, in fact. Well, that's how we work internally. Well, the objective is quite simple, as we have here. It's to foster the knowledge community. It's really a community, a mindset. It's also to encourage what we call the cross-directorate and cross-domain collaboration. We all have the same issue into our respective organizations. We have, I will not use the keywords, dangerous one, silos, but we have domains. And sometimes domains would have a tendency to work a bit in isolation. For innovation, this should be prevented by all means. We cannot have a domain innovative next to a domain non-innovative. That is nonsense. So we have to make sure that across all domains, we are able to speak openly, share views, and in fact, don't feel to be ashamed or don't be afraid to mention something which may look a bit strange to your colleagues. Just a way to have new ideas on new topics, and maybe out of 10 posts, one will be very interesting. And the experience shows it's working pretty well. And we also organize inside the agency a number of other events, lunchtime lecture, all staff meeting and so forth, really to develop this new spirit, this new mindset. So, how to work with you, industry, because that's what you're interested in fact. So, I can speak here on behalf of Jean-Marc Cluzot. We have basically two major tools in the agency. At executive level, we are working on what we call a memorandum of cooperation. It is really a high-level agreement between executives, which gives all of us, you and us, a vision on what we want to commonly develop. A cooperation on whatsoever, AI, a cooperation on drones, I don't know, a buzzword of today, so it can be the case. So how to work between industry, one stakeholder, and us, this will set up the scene at strategic executive level, and then for us, we can implement this vision into various means. In particular, what we call, that's the first sub-bullet in yellow, what we call innovation partnership contracts. That's a very new animal into our landscape. Well, not so new anymore because it's more than a year already old. We have quite a few. Some are already completed. I cannot disclose anything about them, of course, because this is innovative, so there are some IPR you will understand. But what I can really comment based on my own experience, because I was part of most of them, is it is a way to drive our experts through the next step. There are still experts from certification, from flight crew, from ops, etc. But here we have to sit in a room with sometimes a startup with brilliant, bright ideas, very disturbing to us as a safety regulator if we focus, if we stick to our Part 21 mindset. So the question when we launch negotiation for those IPCs is not, it is more how to make it happen. And just a small anecdote, if I may say, at the very early stage of those IPCs, I was in a meeting with a lot of people, and it was amazing. It was pure coincidence. We had D1 presenting, and we had a group of experts, another group of experts, and the presentation was fascinating. It was really something quite interesting. And on the right-hand side, I had people who said, it will never work. Okay, then. And on the left side, okay, that's difficult. How can we make it happen? And I'm not joking. It was really the case. It was amazing the way people were distributed. The right-hand side, we have to drive them through the next, I would say, mindset. And on the left, they were already convinced how to make this happen. It's not easy. We are not prepared. What can we do? And that's what we expect in terms of common benefit, in terms of achievements together with you. So the first one is to drive all of us through this innovative mindset. That means we should be in a brainstorming mode, how to make something happen. Of course, again, I have to put a caveat, we are a safety regulator, so we are targeting certain safety levels, that's clear. But clearly here, alongside this main objective, the other one is for you and for us to learn from each other, to develop, I will not say our knowledge or competencies, but really to develop our common understanding, sometimes common knowledge on a given high-tech topic. For additive manufacturing, now it's quite on track, but I spoke about neural network, for instance, in the agency some years ago. There were not so many people familiar with neural network. Today, we have developed a certain knowledge, I will not say competence, but thanks to a number of discussions in that respect, we have developed a certain culture on neural network. It's just a simple, modest example, but it shows you the benefit of this kind of approach. And of course, we have many other tools, workshop, research cooperation, exchange of experts with industry. Yes, that's something very important. We want to develop exchange of experts, sending some of our experts to you, and vice versa. Again, to exchange knowledge, not only technical, sometimes it can be processes as well. Well, in certification, just to do a bit of advertisement for Rachel's directorate, we had also gone last year through a significant reorganization, and you will find into this new organizational chart all keywords. In general aviation, in so CT2, second from the left, in CT3 VTOL, for instance, you have eVTOL and new concepts. This is really something new, how to prepare the future. In general aviation, you have light manned and unmanned aircraft. Again, here, a lot of work with the next neighbor department on drones, on all those new systems, and many different ones. I have also to mention something. It is not really innovation, but it will facilitate definitely innovation. In the CT4 department, you have a new word, sustainability. Again, here, in the new Commission environment, into the new European mindset, we have to keep this in mind, and we have to make sure that what we do is sustainable on the long term. So this is something new. It looks simple in terms of organization, but in terms of mindset, in terms of how we manage our experts, it is quite significant. And I should not forget the most important one, of course, my new position here at senior level, which is to make innovation visible and to organize it for the directorate. So, I spoke about the partnership a few seconds ago. Basically, that's what we are looking for. And we get more and more contact with you, so it shows it starts to really become a workable tool. We want really to work on this type of technical knowledge, but basically not only addressing novel technologies, but also new business models, as well as new services. And new business models in the new entrants, they are quite sometimes challenging business model to what we do. So this is part of what we have in mind here. It is not using our usual word, the shiny, high-tech, visible part of the system, but it is equally, not to say even more important, those new business models, they are the enablers for the high-tech development. So we are also prepared to work on this. And to conclude here, a very important caveat, we had historical tool, the TAC, Technical Advice Contract. This has nothing to do with innovation. TAC is really short-term. You have a certification program just about to start. Your design is already well developed, well frozen. You want to have a specific advice on some doubts you may have on this program, then we can talk about a TAC. But this is really very standard certification work. If you talk about the feasibility of something new, a proof of concept, a really new challenging model, then we can go for an IPC, because that's what is really important. So we have the graduation, the memorandum, the executive vision, the mission statement for the organizations, how to work together, and then below various tools. And the most important tool, experience starts to show it, is this IPC, Innovation Partnership Contract. So if you have any idea here, do not hesitate to contact Jean-Marc Cluzot or anybody else from the Innovation Cell. We will be very pleased to tell you more about how we are working on this. Alors, Now, we were into a design and certification DOA production workshop. We have not seen many aircraft. You saw one yesterday during Michael's presentation. So I have a couple of slides now to show you the challenge we are faced with. This, for us, is easy business, is daily business. We are very well prepared for years, for decades. We know how to certify this. So we could say historically, no problem. This is a bit more challenging already. That's what we have today on our plate. You may be familiar with some of them. The top left is quite interesting, the PAL-V. The PAL-V is a gyro, so you could say, well, it's not very innovative, but it is also a car. And so that's something which is challenging because they will have, or they should have to comply with aeronautical standards and road standards, and sometimes they are not very compatible. More than electric car, the Stratobus, and so forth, the Lilium, which you know very well, the Aeromobile, and many others. But I took a few examples here to show you. Yesterday, very well established structures, CS23, 25, 27, and so forth. Today, on top of the previous one, this one. So already here, quite challenging. But then, what we may see, I'm not joking, these are contacts we had, this kind of products, or even this kind of product. Maybe 1 or 2 out of those 30 here will survive, or maybe 5 or 10, but in any case, we have to be prepared for the future. This kind of product, you may be familiar with some. Some are flying, some are already, I saw some video. I even was invited once to visit one. I have not yet found the time to go, but I'm sure I will find the time. I'm quite keen to see how for instance, the Terrafugia or some others are really flying in practice. So this is no joke. Some models here are quite challenging to our engineer and pilot mindset, but they are not even more challenging than the one, for instance, the Volocopter or the Lilium, which are already flying today. So in a nutshell, to complete this presentation on innovation, what do we do here? The key word, the starting point was last year, so as I mentioned, creation of this innovation cell by Patrick Key, and this innovation cell has shown to be a good support to all directorates into the agency to prepare ourselves for the future. And with this, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alain. And because of these pictures, you know why he has the most fun job in certification, doing all these nice things. We received one question for you, which is not really something on innovation, but it's an interesting connection.
That's a good one. We could speak for ages about that. We have in place what we call a continuous process improvement. I will use the quality wording just to make sure that we are on the same page. Now, what we are doing today, and it was part of the presentation, in fact, it is not only about new technology, it is also a new business model, and how to get the agency to be better prepared for the future. So, in terms of certification process, you had the first idea by Michael yesterday. We are really shaking our regulatory system, the PAR 21 lights, the GA task force, what we call also, nobody has mentioned it, but the net safety benefit. That's a very interesting concept. For a regulator, for a lawyer also, it is a bit challenging. A net safety benefit is you are not considering the full set of certification specification, but you are having an assessment of the end-to-end safety benefit. Will this system, I'm very black and white here, will this system, for instance, save more life than it will cost? It's a bit simplified. But this net safety benefit is for us also a way to allow innovation to implement system which may not comply with 1309 at the latest amendment or DO178B and so forth, but which will be of so much help to the pilot or to the crew that the relief will be huge. And the overall net safety benefit will be very positive. So all these kind of initiatives are addressing this question, how to improve our certification process definitely we are on the way. Not only through streamlining the processes, being more efficient. You know that we have an efficiency project in the agency, how to work in a more streamlined, into a more lean process, but also in terms of new mindset. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think the mindset is even more important than the process at our expert level. People have to be really prepared to work with you on how to make something happen, of course, into a given framework. And the given framework, we have to agree on it commonly. And that's going back to the previous presentation on standards. We have to make sure that a standard is mutually acceptable. And then once we have this, we may work with a new mindset, how to make it happen a bit better. But still, historically, like any change, any transformation, still you will see, I will use the word the legacy of the standard products for years, probably decades. So we'll have to have two systems, one running down and one running up to handle them. And that's what we're working on. Alors, I may address this one, yes. We are, and here I speak on behalf of Luc Tidgat, who is the director on the safety strategy. He's working really a lot on developing network with universities and also research institutes. We are, next week I will be in DLR, for instance, for a workshop with most of the German researchers. DLR organized next door to us here an event internal, and we will participate with the DLR management on explaining what we do, what is certification, what are the safety objectives, why do we need a certification, and that's what we are doing here. Well, I will not go through the full list because it would be a bit boring, but I can guarantee you we have a lot of direct contact, even some memorandum of cooperation with a number of research institutes. Luc Tidgat, Jean-Marc Clouseau also are working with universities on developing also PhD programs. All that is process under development, and we are very hopeful that it will soon produce the first result. Alors, I wanted to comment on the last bullet here. This may impact issue of competence, definitely, and that's why we want to work with them. For us, IPCs, more contribution to research, more involvement into university studies, which are very close to research most of the time, PhD programs, all of that are tools to develop our competence and to remain either on top or at least to know what is going on in order to be better prepared for the future, and to identify also the necessary needs for, let's say, recruitment or transformation of staff for the next decade. And here with the CCOM, which was presented this morning, we have regular discussion on what are, based on industry feedback, the most important targets for us as a regulator to focus our expertise in terms of transformation or in terms of development.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alain, on the update on innovation. And that brings us to the general question and answer session. And as promised yesterday, we will address some of the questions that were raised yesterday in the various sessions and couldn't be answered due to time constraints. And I would like to ask Michael Gerhardt to join me here on the panel. And I will start with already some. We got not all colleagues here yet to respond back to you directly, but they provided us with their responses. Starting